Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I'm with Kim Muldrow, my sister and partner, and I'm Kelly Rickard. We're with Aging Well Fitness, and we wanted to talk to you today about 7 steps to stop overeating and lose weight. So, how do you go from this to that? Um, we have been able to do it between the two of us. I'm about 11 years in, and Kim is 12 plus years that we were able to lose the weight, and we have maintained it for that period of time. Now, we have a picture of us doing a half marathon, which we were not ever really active as kids anyway, and we're not saying that that's everybody's cup of tea and what you're striving for, but just this method is something to help you get healthier and to lose weight if that's what you need to do. Um, so that
Kelly,
said,
on that really
uh-huh.
quickly, when you say that we weren't really active, I was the girl that could always get out of PE. I could always get out of PE class. I always could find some clever way not to have to do whatever it was that, the teacher was telling me I needed to do. And what I found was once I finally got the courage to start running, and that was thanks to you, um, I found that I had so much energy and that there was just so much life around that I went from couldn't walk 2 miles when I started this whole process to running several half marathons. And it you just never know what you can do until you try to apply yourself to something new. So I just wanted to drop that in case, in case somebody needs a little inspiration there.
Right. Yep. I was going to talk about that later too,
Oh,
about the
okay.
energy and things like that. So what are some of the obstacles to success? And one obstacle for sure is binge eating, which we know has a very negative effect on weight loss. And how and what would you describe as binge eating? So it's any kind of behavior where you're consistent in your diet and the way that you eat, and you have a pattern of behavior that you consider good with what you eat. Then you have a pattern of behavior that breaks that, and you consider it a negative way in which you feel out of control. So I think a good example is you eat a cookie. So eating a cookie is not necessarily considered binge eating, but however, if that eating that one cookie cues you to a response of eating the whole tray of cookies, then that is binge eating because you are out of control. You feel out of control. And most of the time when we do binge eat, we're binge eating on overly heavily processed foods. I mean, I really don't know of anybody that binge eats on broccoli. I mean, I guess it could be done, but we're going to talk about that too, though. So for weight loss to occur, we know that we have to be in a calorie deficit. It really is that simple. Like you have to eat less calories than what you're burning. So and then when you take in less calories than what your body needs, it forces your body to dip into your stored fat cells. However, binging will push you out of that calorie deficit in the long run. And what do we mean by that? So it means that anytime you're taking in more calories than you need, you're no longer in a calorie deficit. So let's give an example. Let's say I'm able to stay at 1,300 calories per day during the week. I'm in a weight loss phase, so I'm trying to stay on a lower end. And I'm successful Monday through Friday, but the weekend rolls around and I'm hanging out with friends or family, and we're going out to eat and maybe drinking some alcohol. And before I know it, I've consumed 5,000 calories that day. And maybe I do it the next day too. Well, guess what? I just knocked myself out of my calorie deficit that I worked so hard for during the week. And now I am in a calorie surplus, which can be very easy to do. And you just, it's calories consumed over time on an average. So it's not just, oh, I was at 1,200 calories today. It's the average. So you must have a systemic lifestyle change in order to successfully lose the weight. And even after you've lost the weight, in order to maintain it, you have to make changes in order to break that crazy weight loss cycle.
Yes, and we worked with a lot of people that will do so well during the week, and I have done the same thing in the beginning of this process. You do really well, and you're so proud of yourself, and then somebody brings out the pizza or somebody brings out whatever, and you think, oh, a little bit's not going to hurt me, and then you throw yourself out of that calorie deficit, and it's very depressing because you've worked so hard and you've really mapped out everything that you've eaten all week, and you just worked really hard and then it's all gone over just a few things or more than a few things that you've indulged in that throw you out of that deficit.
And it's just a crazy cycle because
Mhm.
back when I was in this yo-yo and couldn't understand, well, I'm doing so good during the week, I would think, oh, well, I can be really good during the week and then stray off a little bit on the weekend. But it didn't do me justice because I was still in this crazy yo-yo cycle of dieting and I could not ever reach the results that I needed or wanted. So we have some solutions for you for that for today. And the first step one of the seven is to simply eat more food, which may sound the opposite of what you think you need to do, because the mistake that so many people make is they think they're going to severely limit their food and calories in order to lose weight, which you can do and you will see results, but it's not sustainable over time. I mean, you can only willpower your way through, a weight loss like that for a limited amount of time. You want to adopt a lifestyle that you can maintain and feel satisfied and be happy with the results. So part of the way to turn off those cravings that cause that binge eating is you want to fill your stomach so that you feel full and satisfied. And I think I can speak for Kim on this as well as myself. I've been guilty of trying every fad diet out there. I mean, you name it, I've probably done it. We've probably done it. I mean, we've done Weight Watchers, a low carb diet, the Atkins diet, South Beach, Mediterranean, and none of those were sustainable for us. But this lifestyle is sustainable. We have energy, we have the health that we want, and we have the body that we want. So it's simply not sustainable to think that you're going to be able to do all of those other things. You have to have a change. You have to change what you eat and how you eat to break that crazy diet cycle. So how are we going to do that? We are going to do it by eating, and we do it by eating whole food, plant-based foods. So eat foods that are high satiety, have a high satiety index. Certain foods have more of a satisfying satiety, like potatoes. They're approximately 400 calories per pound versus peanut butter, which is approximately 2,800 calories per pound. But if you eat potatoes and those other high fiber foods, it really does keep you feeling full for longer, and it's going to diminish the likelihood that you're going to binge because cravings are usually cued by hunger. So we have a calorie density chart that we wanted to share with you. And you can see on the left side that we're on the lower end of calories. And those are our non-starchy vegetables, our fruit, potatoes, whole grains, legumes. Not only are these foods lower in calories and high in fiber, they will keep you full longer. I was going to bring in like a pound of frozen broccoli versus the 2 servings of peanut butter, and just compare the calories and fiber, and you stay full longer on if you stay to the left side, and that's going to be your friend side for losing weight for sure. So on the right side, you see that foods that are in red, they're highly processed foods. They're not found in nature. They contain few to no micronutrients and little to no fiber and water. So they contribute very little to satiety. So you're eating like a couple of tablespoons, or maybe you're eating bread, and it's just higher in calories and it's not as filling. So therefore, you're going to eat more to try to accomplish that full satisfying feeling. Kim, did you want to give an example of, of the nuts and the seeds and
Oh
how
yeah,
we
absolutely.
implement that into our
Yeah.
diet?
So you see that the nuts, seeds, and nut butters and tahini, they are all that's 2,800 calories per pound, which um, I know that Dr. Furman says you should, if you're in a weight loss phase, you should eat no more than 1 ounce of nuts a day, nuts and seeds. Um, so I personally stayed away from nut butters and when I was in, and I do still today. I love peanut butter, but it's not something that I have a lot of control with. So I just stay away from things that I can't control. But if you're going to have nuts and seeds, put them on a salad, put them in your food, measure that out. Kelly and I talk about, we laugh all the time because I was at her house one day many, many years ago, and she was prepping, she was meal prepping, and she handed me a bag of almonds and she said, count out 13 or some very weird number. And I thought, what? And so that was a serving, and that's what she had that counted out. And that way, I learned something that day that's always stuck with me because if you have it with you in the amount you're supposed to have, you're more than likely going to stick to that. But if you have that bag in front of you and you're hungry, you're going to do probably double, triple what you should have. And the calories just add up so quickly for such little food. So that's what I have to say on the nuts and seeds is if you're going to do it, have it measured out and eat it with something else. Don't just eat it by itself because you're going to be hungry and tempted.
Right. Okay. Good point. Okay, next we're going to talk about the power of habits. And it's just amazing how your brain can automatically, if you do a routine like a few times, your brain will automatically set that pattern for you. And before you know it, you're on autopilot and you're just going through the motions. So why is it, that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to break habits. But our behaviors fall into the four-step sequence. And I learned this from Atomic Habits. So we have a cue and a trigger, then we'll get a craving, how we want to change our current state. And then we have a response, which is something we do about the craving. And then we get the reward, which is the dopamine hit from the response. So our brains learn over time the sequence of behavior, and we can just automatically go on an autopilot. And in the book, there was a story of a lady that she loved to ride horses, and she had this routine of going with her friend. And she and her friend would go and ride horses. This was the only time that she would smoke. Outside of that, she was not a smoker. But when she got on the horse with her friend, she would light up a cigarette and ride the horse and smoke her cigarette. Well, something happened. I don't remember. They either moved apart, but for some reason they stopped doing it. But many years later, this lady's going to go for another horse ride. What do you think happened when the moment she got on top of that horse? She had not smoked for years, but she instantly had a cue. That cue was the horse and the riding, and she got that craving to have a cigarette. I mean, it's just amazing the power of our brain and the memory that's locked there over that much time and that many years. So I have an example of like, so let's say you see brownies on the counter. And a lot of times I don't even think about food or wanting food or think about it at all. But when I see it, I suddenly want it. So I go in and I see brownies on the counter and it causes that trigger or that cue. So I eat the brownie, which causes that dopamine hit, and I feel satisfied, fully because what have I done? I've eaten fat, salt, sugar, and my brain says, "Yep, I told you that's a good thing." And so I'll continue to do that cycle until I learn to break it from the autopilot. So it's just amazing how powerful that is. So, what are we going to do in response to that? We're going to work on our environment. And Kim and I have talked about this so much in our calls and our coaching calls, and something that we repeat over time. I know my clock is going off in the background, but something that we constantly say is that that's one of Dr. Doug Lyle's things that he says is sometimes you have to work on your environment harder than you have to work on yourself. So you want to make it harder to consume the foods that you're craving. So remove your biggest trigger foods from your home or your environment that you're in, if it's in the office, home, whatever. And for those foods that you can't remove, say it's for, a spouse, family member, somebody else that you share a space with. So you can't remove it, but put it on the top shelf in the pantry. So when you open the pantry, it's not at eye level, and that's the first thing you see. Because if that's a trigger for you, if that is a trigger food for you, it is going to trigger you. You're going to see it and want it. Put it in the bottom of the freezer. So, somebody loves vegan ice cream. So, that's a trigger food for you. You can't just have one or you don't need one. So put it in the bottom of the freezer. So when you pull out the freezer, that's not the first thing on top and the first thing that you see. You have to put a barrier between yourself and the action of binging. And that's one way to do that.
And that's a key. That is a massive key. That if you can separate yourself, I see it. It's not only with us, I see it with kids. They don't want that until they see it. So,
Right.
sometimes I'm just like, why is that such a trigger for me? Because it's a trigger for everybody. For most people it is. So we have to be
Right.
very diligent in cleaning up our environment or making it more difficult to have access to those foods that we know are not going to make us successful.
Because if you don't, if it's a pattern that you've established in the past, your brain's going to go on autopilot and you're just going to repeat those same behaviors. So you have to break that cycle, and that's one way to do it. Okay, another thing is we can work with the craving instead of working against it. So the problem with binging is that we typically binge on overly processed, high calorie foods that bring us out of our calorie deficit, right? That's what we established in the beginning. So binge or mindlessly snack on foods that are that have lower calorie density, such as carrot chips, those sweet peppers. You can cut those up and eat those. You can slice cucumbers, grapes. Change what you're eating. So you have a craving, you want to eat. So eat things like we just shared, so it's not harmful to you. And that way you can break that pattern and you can lose the weight that you've been trying to lose for so long. And if you're craving something like cake, well, and you just think that you have to have it, make a sweet potato brownie. Find healthier items to binge on over those unhealthy alternatives. You have anything to add to that, Kim?
Something that I forget about when you were naming off all those different things, those sugar snap peas
Oh,
are
yes.
they are so amazing. And that's what we just got back from a trip and that's what we ate, all of us in the truck. That's what we wanted were those sugar snap peas with some hummus. It's just a matter of changing that changing that cycle
Swapping
because
and
yes,
swapping that out.
yes, and you have to. And it's not something that you can just do once and then be okay with. It's the pattern that you have to develop. It's the habit that you have to develop in your life that will lead to long-term success, which is what all of our goal is to have long-term success.
Step 5 is make use of delayed gratification. So instead of thinking perfection and telling yourself, that you have to be all in, you have to change the language for yourself. So I can have a cookie if I want a cookie, but I'm not going to eat it right now. So give yourself power. That's giving yourself power. You're not denying yourself. You're saying, I could have it if I want it, but I'm just not going to have it right now. And give yourself time so that you're not being controlled by that feeling. Let go of that perfectionism around that food, and it's not an all in or nothing lifestyle. And I have a good example of this, and this is something that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. And, Kim and I, we've been able to lose this weight. Like I said, between the two of us, we've lost 160 pounds. We've kept it off for over a decade, but we're still susceptible to those cravings, and it's still a work in progress. And a couple of weeks ago, oh, I know what it was. I was cleaning out my recipe book, and I ran across a couple of years ago, I had made a vegan cake by a social media post that I saw. And it was vegan, but it wasn't necessarily all healthy ingredients. And trigger cue, I saw that recipe and thought about, oh, that was really good. Well, 2 weeks later, one evening, I'm in there, I'm like, I think I'm going to make that cake. Like, the weekend's coming up and I'm going to make that cake. And then I was like, no, you're not going to make that cake. Like you don't need it. Um, I'm just not. And I put that off and I just said, I can make it tomorrow. If I still want it, I'll make it tomorrow. And it's so funny, I went to bed, slept, woke up the next morning, did not think a thing about that cake. So if you separate yourself from that with time too, that will help also.
And
Just a tip.
well, and a lot of people say, when you said, I can have the cookie, but I'm not going to have it right now. A lot of people say, oh, you're depriving yourself and that's the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it, in my opinion, what I have learned is that I now have control. I now have whatever control that I can have over my health. I have control over what I put in my body. I it's a sense of gratification, of satisfaction that I never had when I was eating out of control, when I was allowing the food scientists to control what went into my mouth, and that's
Right.
a big deal. I mean, and you don't once you feel that, once you get that feeling, it's something that you're going to love, that you're going to because you're in control, and it's just a big deal. So it's something
And
I don't
you're
know.
experiencing all the positives from it
Yes,
too. I mean, you have the
absolutely.
body that you want, you're experiencing the health that you want, you have the energy to, run a half marathon if you choose to,
Yes,
or play on the playground with your grandkids. When I see all the other grandparents sidelined, because maybe, and I'm not saying anything bad, I'm just saying it's the power is within your control if you're willing to do it and take charge of it.
yep.
So
And yeah,
when
and
we do
not that it's
mess up,
easy, but
no,
it's
it is
something that you
not.
can do. It's doable.
Yes. So step 6 is we're going to learn from our failures. So rather than using an excuse as a failure as an excuse to punish yourself, just ask, why did I do that? Because many times we slip up or fail because, we didn't prepare properly or we didn't eat enough. And when you don't eat enough, you're going to find yourself grazing in the kitchen again, 2, 3 hours later, looking for something else to eat. So just set yourself up for success. Learn from when you do slip up and learn, why did I do that? Did I eat enough? Was I prepared, with my food like I could be or should be in order to prevent that? So I say every mistake is a progress. You're progressing to as long as you're learning you're moving in the right direction.
Yes, failing forward.
Step 7, we're going to always celebrate small successes and don't obsess over perfectionism. So it'll take time to change and you will experience failure along the way. If you eat 2 cookies instead of 10, that's a win.
Yeah.
If you go out to eat and you overeat, let's say binge on tortilla chips, but the next morning you get right back on your plan, guess what? It's a win.
Yes,
So look
absolutely.
for improvement in yourself. Finding progress and improved behavior is motivating. And then we talk about it all the time. Small, consistent changes can have major progress in a year's time. Those compounding effects of the small, consistent changes that you repeatedly do on a daily basis can have a major impact in your health, in your body, in your mental health at over a year's time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So our key takeaways. We're going to eat enough food and eat on the lower end of the calorie dense foods. We're going to work to change our habits and mindset around food. And we're going to celebrate small wins and do not beat ourselves up for slip ups. We're going to change our conversation with ourselves, and that will help change your habits and your mindset around food. And another example from that book that I'm reading, Atomic Habits. Happens to be a smoker again, but there are many other examples. But so there are 2 guys, and a man offers guy number 1 a cigarette, and he says, "No, thanks, I'm trying to quit." He offers a cigarette to the second guy, and the second guy says, "No, I'm not a smoker." They both were smokers,
Mm,
but Do you see the difference in the mental, in the mindset? You know, one is like he's still a smoker and battling it. And then the other one is like he was a smoker too, but he just said, no, I'm not a smoker because he's no longer doing it.
Yeah,
That
that's
to me
good.
is huge in mindset and how
That's
you
good.
approach it.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything to add?
No, I think all these points are just they're what made us successful. It's the things that we've learned in our on our journey, and we had to learn all most of these the hard way. So,
Trial
to
and
me,
error.
yes, and to me, it is about just keeping your focus, having a plan. How do I get there? Knowing what you want, and being kind to yourself in the process, and not necessarily worrying about what others have to say because others will have plenty to say. They always do. And people are very threatened when you are changing your life. People are afraid you're going to want them to change theirs too. And so don't worry about other people. Don't even, you don't even have to talk to them about what you're doing. You know what you want and what you need, and you work toward that every day. And be kind when you don't necessarily make the right decision.
Yes. And you bring up a good point that we, through trial and error, we have learned our way. But back, 11 years ago, we did not have the things that we have today.
Yes.
So, we worked through all of that. And I would say, Kim and I are trying to create useful content that post on our channel to help you. But if you feel like you need more than that, we also offer coaching on a one-to-one basis. So you can find that information at agingwellfitness.com. And we've been there, we've done it, we've been successful now for over a decade. And we would love to hear from you what you're doing, maybe the successes you've had or
Mm,
some struggles that you've had. And if you need that little extra help, please reach out and we'll see if our program is a good fit for you.
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Kim. And I hope this is helpful to some of you out there and let us know if we can help. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Kelly.